Studies. I am David Abuajidakun, your Master of Ceremony for today's event. It is a pleasure to have you all join us for this important discussion. Before we begin, we'd like to take the opening prayer from Mr. Kenneth Benasco. Mr. Kenneth Benasco, if you are online, kindly give us the opening prayer. Thank you very much.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Please, let's close our eyes whilst we take the opening prayer. Okay, gracious God, we thank you for this afternoon. Father Lord, we soak this program into thy care. We ask that let this program go on smoothly so that everything that will be said and taught here will be grasped in much more knowledge, and so that we'll be able to use whatever we learn here in our everyday lives. These are many things we ask. In Jesus' mighty name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Mr. Kenneth Benasco. We are grateful. To officially begin our webinar, I am honored to invite Professor Emmanuel Asamoah, Dean of the Faculty of Information Technology and Communication Studies, to deliver the welcome address. Please join me in welcoming Prof. Asamoah. Hello, Prof.
Thank you very much. I believe you can hear me.
Yes, loud and clear, Prof.
Yes, please.
Very well. So my task is very simple. We want to welcome everybody to this platform. We started this online webinar series and we have come very far. Our intention is to bring experts who will speak to topical issues, trending issues that confronts activities in the virtual space. And today, I believe that the topic, for those who are aware, is very relevant in the light of what has happened in recent times. And I have looked at the profile of the presenters, and I'm very confident that they'll be able to do justice to the topic. In the end, all of us are going to benefit. We are going to learn a lot. I'll just urge everyone on this platform to pay attention, listen very carefully, ask relevant questions, and let's all learn together. I'd like to say that on my own behalf as a Dean for Faculty of IT and Communication Studies, the rest of the management of the faculty, the HODs, the Vice Deans, all the lecturers, we welcome everybody to this platform. This webinar series is fully backed by the Vice Chancellor of the university, who is in support of all such initiatives aimed at disseminating knowledge and sharing ideas. The Pro-Vice Chancellor is also aware of this event, and on my behalf and on their behalf as well, I welcome everybody to this platform this afternoon. I believe that it's going to be very insightful. We are going to learn a lot, and let's all cooperate and observe the protocols as far as webinar series are concerned. What I mean is that let's mute when we have to mute, let's unmute when we have to unmute, and let's just ensure that there is a free flow of information so that all can benefit. On that note, I welcome everybody. Let's pay attention and proceed with the rest of the proceedings. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, bro. We are grateful for those inspiring words. Now it is my privilege to introduce Mr. Russell Taki from the Department of Marketing, UPSA, who will introduce our chairpersons for today's event. Mr. Russell, if you are online, kindly unmute yourself.
Okay. Good afternoon to everyone. My name is Russell Taki. I'm a final year student of UPSA offering marketing. Okay, so it is my esteemed pleasure to introduce the co-chairpersons for this event. So our first co-chairman, we have Dr. Godfred Akufi. Dr. Godfred Akufi is the Vice Dean of Faculty of IT and Communication Studies. He holds a PhD in Information Systems Management and also a professional engineer. He has worked in telecommunication space with multinational organizations like British Telecom, AT&T, and Orange. He served as manager for Ghana Telecom, Vodafone Ghana, now Telecel, Huawei Technologies for over 10 years. And now to our second chairman. Dr. Emmanuel Owusu-Oware is a former Vice Dean of the Faculty of IT and Communication Studies. He has over 25 years of experience as IT manager, consultant, and academic. He holds a Bachelor of Science in Electrical and Electronic Engineering Telecommunications and a PhD in Information Systems. He has worked with Water River Authority in Yari, Standard Chartered Bank, Ernst & Young, and the University of Ghana. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, invited guests, student body, I introduce to you your chairman. Chairman, your audience. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Taki, for the introduction. We shall not take the chairman's opening remarks.
Okay, good afternoon to you all.
Good afternoon, Doc.
Yes, we are Emmanuel Owusu-Oware. So I'll do the opening and then Dr. Oware will do the closing. So once again, good afternoon. And I would like to first of all appreciate the Dean of the faculty for making time to come and give us the opening address. And then I'll also want to welcome our distinguished panelists for their precious time to be part of this afternoon's webinar, which is dubbed Building Resilience in Internet in Free, an exciting one because of one, the expertise of the panelists put together, and of course, the timely nature and relevance of the topic. And now to the issues. We've had, or we all know what happened in a couple of days in the internet space. And we're saying that this one is unprecedented. Internet outages are normal if they last for some few minutes or hours. Sometimes they are not even noticeable because of the redundant links in place. In this particular instance, the main links plus the redundant links of almost all the telcos went down. This exposed the vulnerability of Ghana's network in general and posed serious questions about the resilience of the networks. And it has affected the daily operations of companies who rely on the internet primarily for their businesses. Individuals as well couldn't use the internet for anything because it was simply down at some points, and then at other points it was on and off for a long time. For once, almost everybody was concerned and was asking questions why and what happened, and the fact that there were no redundant links immediately to rely on. I believe these are some of the questions that our panelists will help to answer for us. And they are also part of the reasons for this webinar. The obvious question after all this was the way forward in terms of our internet infrastructure to ensure that this situation does not happen again. That is to say, even if the major links go down at the same time, we will still have some backups to sustain internet access and usage till they are completely resolved. Personally, this topic brings reminiscent moments because I've been part in these developments and in the developments in this space at some points in time. From the days of circuit switching, dial-up internet, to satellite broadband, and then to fiber. And what I've been thinking quite recently is how the world has moved so quickly to submarine cable lengths, covering over 99% of the internet infrastructure, leaving most of the broadband satellite links decommissioned. What happened to broadband satellite data resource? Why was it discontinued completely? Was it due to high cost of maintenance of earth stations? Was it because of the overwhelming benefits of the submarine optical fiber, such as the lower latency, high bandwidth, and more resilience and reliability in terms of weather impact? Don't you think it would have served as a solid backup in this case of failure of all redundant subsea fiber networks? I hope the panelists will touch on all these to bring a better understanding of the issues at stake. I don't take the wind out of their sails. I will encourage everybody to send messages to all colleagues, call one, call many, and tell them that there is an important discussion going on. Share the links and let them join now to come and learn and also contribute to this ongoing discussion, so we can help in one way or the other to proffer solutions for the future of Ghana's internet infrastructure challenges and issues. I believe strongly that the best team has been assembled to do justice to this topic, and our time spent online will never be a waste. Questions will be allowed after their delivery, and more information where applicable. So enjoy the program and let's all learn something new. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Akrofi. Thank you very much. As he said, ladies and gentlemen, let's brace ourselves for an enlightening session where we will undoubtedly learn so much about Ghana's internet, or how to build resilience in Ghana's internet infrastructure. Okay, I would like to call upon Mrs. Dorcas Boateng, the Secretary of the Technology Trends and Awareness Committee, who will introduce our panelists for today's discussion. Mrs. Dorcas Boateng, if you are online, kindly unmute yourself and introduce our panelists. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Abajadakun. Good afternoon to you all. I'm intrigued to call upon to introduce our panelists for today's discussion. First on our list is Mr. Joseph Odoi. Mr. Joseph Odoi has served as a country manager, head of business, general manager and business development head in various multinational organizations, and has close to 30 years of progressive responsibility in the telecoms business environment. He has a proven leadership and track record in managed care, sales, a variety of engineering and corporate settings, and business ownership. He is a motivated team player with immense knowledge of multitasking to meet organizational goals. He possesses skills in innovative thinking, motivational leadership, and performance improvement. He has served as head of Glo Ghana Business from June 2014 to January 2024. Prior to that, he served as country manager, Main One Cable Ghana, general manager, Enterprise Solutions Sales SAT3 Ghana, Telecoms Vodafone, general manager of technical sales and support, Enterprise Solutions Ghana Telecoms. And he is well versed in this area. The next person that I would like to introduce is Dr. Edwin Tete Ayeno. He's also an accomplished academic and leader in the field of information science, currently serving as the director of the Documentation and Information Management Center here in UPSA. He brings a wealth of experience and expertise to his role. Previously, he held the esteemed position of Dean for the Faculty of Information Technology and Communication Studies, where he demonstrated his commitment to advancing education and research in the field. Dr. Ayeno earned his Doctor of Philosophy in Information Science from the University of South Africa, solidifying his deep understanding of the intricacies of information management and communication. With a strong academic background and a proven track record of leadership, he continues to make significant contributions to the field, shaping the future of information management and education. The last but not the least panelist on our list is Mr. Andrews Asumi. He is a seasoned telecom engineer with over 2 decades of experience in terrestrial transmission and submarine fiber optic cable communications networks. He holds a bachelor's degree in electrical and electronic engineering, as well as a Commonwealth Executive Masters of Business Administration in General Management, both from Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, Kumasi. His expertise lies in designing, implementing, and managing telecommunications network, making him a valuable asset in the industry. Ladies and gentlemen, these distinguished discussants represent a diverse range of expertise and perspectives, ensuring a comprehensive and thought-provoking exploration of this topic. Let's welcome and give them unwavering support whilst they help us through this topic. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Dorcas Watson, for introducing our panelists. Now, our panel of experts will now delve into the topic, building resilience in Ghana's internet infrastructure. Please welcome our panel discussants, Mr. Joseph Odoi, Dr. Edwin Ayeno, and Mr. Andrews Asumi. Now, this session will be moderated by Dr. Godfred Akrofi and Dr. Emmanuel Osowari. Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I told you we are going to have a nice time because the panelists that we have gathered are experts in their own field, and in particular for this topic, they are experts. So I believe it's going to be a nice time that you're going to spend for the next 1 to 2 hours. Now, we are going to pose questions. Myself and Dr. Osu Owari are going to pose questions to our panelists, and I'll do some, and then my co-chair will also do some. And then once the question is posed, all the 3 panelists can take it up and then go through in answering them. But we would be pointing out who should answer first, second, and in that order. So we begin. We want to know what actually happened. We want to establish the facts of the internet outage from the panelists' perspectives. So we want to know what actually happened. That is our first question. We all know that there were internet outages and people were talking about it. Information came into the media from NCA and things like that. People were giving information, sometimes they are even conflicting. So once you are here, we want to know what actually happened. So I would like to give the first question to Mr. Joseph Odoi. Mr. Joseph Odoi. So please do the honors for us.
Okay, thank you very much. I hope you can hear me loud and clear.
Loud and clear. Loud and clear.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, moderator. It's a very interesting question. I just want to go straight to it. To be honest with you, to see from the industry perspective, we cannot say exactly what happened as at now. As of today, we don't know exactly what happened, but there are some. I've seen all kinds of comments on social media, and I've seen all kinds of reactions of other people saying all kinds of things. But we can only know the truth when the vessels that repair the cables actually retrieve the cables from the seabed, and then they do a postmortem of the faults, by which time I think they would have collected enough data, and then they can come out and say as to whether it was a seismic activity, like some of you heard, whether it was maybe an earthquake, was it climate change that led to some waves, that led to maybe some earth movement. We do not know at this point. We can only speculate, but there's a suspicion that this could be maybe some seismic activity, but I would like to, for now, be very cautious. I think we need to hold on. The vessels that are repairing the cable have all gone out now. We expect that the first repair will be completed by the 17th of this month, and then I'm sure that the reports will start coming out. So for now, I don't want to speculate. I don't want to speculate, and I don't want to say exactly what happened, but cuts do happen. Let me say this. Fiber cuts do happen. I've been here from the beginning, from where in 2009 when we had SAT3, which was the only cable running across the whole West Africa connecting to Europe. And I have seen a lot of cuts. So cuts do happen. The only challenge we had this time was that we had almost 4 out of the 6 cables that serve West Africa to Europe went down. And so this is unprecedented. And I think this is why a lot of you had services disrupted, because normally cable systems have inbuilt redundancies. So with these inbuilt redundancies, even when cuts happen, the switching time is when you get to notice a blip in the internet service, and then service is quickly restored. But because we had 4 different outages, pressure came to bear on the 2 cables that were left on the West Coast. And then on the East Coast of Africa, as most of you will know, 3 cables had already gone down. So they had lost about 25% traffic. Now, this traffic had been switched to the West Coast of Africa. So it meant that there was a lot of pressure on the cables that were in West Africa. And that's the reason why you had that massive disruption all over the place. So I would like to say that maybe in my next lecture, I'll be able to give you the full reasons why what happened occurred, and then we can learn from that. But I think this has been a very big eye-opener for West Africa, and in fact, Africa as a whole, because we lost traffic in the whole of Africa. So this is something that if we want to promote trade within Africa, we need to resolve. So I think this seminar is the right one. And I'm happy that there is a university that has taken the lead in trying to get answers to exactly what happened, and then how we can move forward. So at this point, this is what I'll say.
Thank you very much, Mr. Odoi. So the fact has been established that cable cuts are not abnormal, they are normal. The problem is that in this particular instance, most of them were cut at the same time, and this caused internet outage problem. So thank you very much. You also like to hear from Mr. Andrews, assuming we also like to hear from him. And then from him, we come to Dr. Ayeno. So Mr. Assuming, you can also take the same question. What happened? You may want to delve into other areas to supplement what Mr. Joseph Odoi said. So, Mr. Asumin, you can take over.
Okay. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I hope you can hear me clear.
Yes, please, we can.
Okay. So Mr. Odoi has said everything and he has narrated the issues. And so we have some better understanding. So I just want to add a bit of information. On the morning of 14th March, we had the cable break for the submarine operators, one after the other. And so you could see that the first cable that was affected was ACE, then followed by SAT3, MIN1, and then WASC. And so thankfully, SAT3 cable has been repaired. The repair operation was completed on the 6th, that is 11:50 UTC. And so SAT3 is restored. And so I will go ahead and then indicate what they saw regarding the repair. All the cables that I mentioned is SAT3, WASC, MIN1, they cross a particular feature that is called canyon in the deep sea, close to Abidjan. And in order that they were laid out of the coast of Abidjan, ACE comes first, and that one was distracted. Then the next one is SAT3. So they span away from the coast. Now, the cable ship completed the repair. We got the information that they couldn't retrieve the extremities of the cable. And they are pretty sure the fault was inside the canyon. So the canyon was just a deep, narrow valley with steep sides. And so what happened was they had to cut the cable and then go over the canyon and then cut the other side and then insert a new section. Simple because normally they have to retrieve these cables, examine it, cut those portions and take pictures and then incorporate it in their report. Sometimes they also physically bring it to the cable stations and then we keep it as exhibits. But in this case, they couldn't retrieve it. And so there's possibility that they were embedded under some sediments or something. And so that canyon is called Le Tron Sans Fond. I'm sure it's a French name in the deep sea of Abidjan. So as Mr. Odoi also said, we are just guessing that it could be a landslide or any seismic activity or a lot of debris, rocks fell onto these cables and were buried. And that's how come the cable ship was not able to retrieve the 40 sections for all of us to see. So this is what I will add to what has already been said. I believe as we go along, there will be some further questions and maybe further clarifications. For now, this is what I have to say. Thank you. Hello.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, please.
So thank you very much, Mr. Asumin.
I hope I spoke. I hope you heard.
Yes, we heard
yes.
you.
I was not speaking. Okay. Thank you very much.
Heard you. So thank you very much for throwing more light on what happened. We would like to go to Mr. Dr. Ayeno. Dr. Ayeno. You also add something to it in trying to unravel what happened. So, Dr. Ayeno, you can please.
I'm still okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman, for the events. But let me start. If Dean is still here, let me acknowledge the presence of the Dean and say good afternoon to Chairman, your co-chairman, the moderator, the organizers, colleagues, and I'm also happy to see some students participating, a number of students participating in this events. And I think that is very insightful. The two engineers or infrastructure persons, I think, have already given the background as to what possibly happened. Like Ms. Odoi said, that is not fully established as to the real cause, but usually there are three reasons why we'll have network cuts through fiber cuts, or the breaks in network is either a natural disaster, seismic activities, underwater, earthquakes, tsunamis, etc. Natural disasters that do occur in the deep seas that can trigger fiber cuts. There can also be human errors, like ships by their activities, fishing ships, and their activities, breaking cables. The third one, probably by sabotage. People intentionally getting into the seas to destroy networks, sometimes even terrorist activities, which is what is being attributed to as the cause of. Recently, there was another fiber cut somewhere around the Yemen seas, and it was believed that terrorist activities resulted to that. So until we have enough data, we'll be able to establish whether it was an accident or a seismic activity, as the two engineers or the infrastructure persons has established. But what happened, I'm looking at it in terms of the services that sit on this connectivity. You build a fiber, ISPs, NMOs, etc., provide services, and out of that, all internet or web-driven content. That is where I like to look at in terms of what happened. What happened is that even though we had the fiber cut, or we had probably in the last 50 years, the worst disruption of any form of connectivity, or the most novel internet outage ever since Ghana or West Africa, we became very prominent in the internet space. This is the worst we've seen so far. Even though this happened, within some matter of maybe minutes, some internet services, emphasis on services, was running. And some were local services and some were international services. And that is very important for us to know as researchers or academics. Maybe as we go on, we will explain or find reasons why. So for example, services mounted on Google platforms, Gmail, YouTube, all the services that run on Google, they were working. The question is, how come, even though we had the worst form of network outage ever, Google still worked? Locally, there were some products. I'm sometimes not too comfortable mentioning names, but I can mention maybe one or two. So for example, if you were using a platform like Haptel, if you were using Haptel platform, you could have your services. If you were using ExpressPay, you could have your services, even though a number of banks and commercial e-commerce platforms went down. Either Ghanaian owned or locally based companies running this e-commerce or international e-commerce website that provide local services went down. We still had a number of these platforms still running, even in the thick of the outage. And that is something that we have to be interested in. How come others were down? Others around. For Google, it is fiber terminating somewhere near Togo, between Togo and Ghana. And probably it was much easier that if they have redundancy in Ghana through that fiber connection, then all Google services were running without any interruption. I think Facebook and the Meta platforms, they also had their services running. So even in the West, if you ask what happened, the engineers have explained But even in the thick of the worst form of outage, we still had services running and services not running. And as we go on, we'll find answers to why that and what that will answer of course, probably the purpose of this discussion. What is the way forward? How come some platforms still were active? How come some platforms did not completely shut down and others completely shut down? So this will be my initial comments about what happened. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ayano. Dr. Ayano has veered into other areas which we will be asking later. But it's nice. It's a nice discussion. I'm enjoying it very well. I would like to call in my co-chair to continue. I think the first two questions have been answered, even though we sought to answer what happened. We've also answered why did it happen. So the first two questions have been answered. So Dr. Usowari, you can come in to continue. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, my co-chair, Dr. Akrofi. And good afternoon to all. Yes, maybe a follow-up question concerning what actually happened. It's been explained that multiple cables were involved in terms of the cuts. And I want to find out from the panelists, especially the engineers, these multiple cables, I'm just wondering, by way of design, how come that we have a number of cables? We're talking about WAC SAT3 and main one, and I think there is a fourth one. Was it a case that they are close together such that a cut will just affect all of them? Of course, you have said that at this time we cannot establish what the cause was, but just trying to appreciate the design or how these cables have been laid under sea. And we have a case where these multiple cables, yes, of course, they are from different undersea cable providers. You wouldn't expect that they will lay their cables so close to each other. And yet, we have multiple cuts. So I want to interrogate that situation. Maybe you can also give us some insight also on the owners of these cables. I mean, this is an educational platform. Who are they? SAT3, WACS, and main one. That will also be some helpful information. Yeah, so primarily, if you can give us some insight as to the cables involved and how come they could be cut at the same time. You can't just understand why different cables from different providers will be cut at the same time. Yes, I appreciate that you can't establish the cause. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so maybe Mr. Odo and then Mr. Andrews, assuming can, then of course my colleague Dr. Ayano can come in if he has some insight concerning these cables. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Emmanuel. I think I wasn't expecting this question. It's very deep, but it's a very relevant question. You've asked a very sensitive question. It's something that we have all been racking our heads over. We need to. That is why I said in the beginning that we need to get a full report, because even though they have made different network operators, like you said, we have SAT. Okay, let me mention the cable companies. We have SAT3, we have Main One, we have Glow One, we have Ace, Dolphin is the same, and then we have WAX. These are the cables that were affected. The Google cable was not affected. It was not part. That's the cable they call Equino. Equino was not affected in the cut. And that is why Equino helped us. They were able to carry a lot of the traffic. Actually, a lot of the traffic was offloaded onto Equino. Because it's a relatively new cable, not many companies had actually done connectivity to it. So that was one of the challenges, but it's been resolved. So basically, you should ask a question that, which are the companies that laid the cable? So you find out there's a common partner here, that Alcatel Submarine actually laid most of these cables. So it's just, even though the cables are owned differently by companies and some are also by consortium cables, you have a company like Alcatel Submarine laying majority of the cables. I know Main One was laid differently by a company called T-Subcon, which is an American company. But you see, on the international highway that is under the ocean, in the international waters, they first of all do survey. They conduct surveys, and after the survey is conducted, then they determine the location where the cables have to be placed. Now, there are areas, you see this ocean, it's just like land. There are valleys, there are, like you said, like there are canyons, there are mountains. It's rough. So they have to do a thorough survey to determine areas where there will be the least number of obstacles that will affect the cable before the cables are laid. Now, once the cables are placed, also, there's a lot of monitoring that goes on. But there are certain areas under the ocean bed that are unavoidable. We all have to pass through certain very narrow locations in the seabed, under the seabed. So probably that is why it is possible that maybe at the canyon location that my fellow panelists talked about, they had to narrow down to almost all the cables being at that one particular location. So this question is very relevant, but it will all come out from the final report. The final report will tell us. The other thing is also because in Africa, we have not diversified our cable, let me say, scenario, because you have almost all the cables going from West Africa, the west coast of Africa, to Europe. We don't have a lot of cables going, say, to South America. So now the thinking now is that, why don't we have cable diversity? Why don't we even have inland cables? Because basically we can link West Africa to East Africa on land using the high tension power lines, which is also relatively very safe. So these are things that the regulators have to now begin to answer. We need to now, if we want to especially talk about the continental trade that we want to do in Africa, if we want to now link, let's say, customs of Ghana to customs of Nigeria to customs of Kenya, that is where we are going to have a major issue. Because like I said in my earlier submission, at the same time that we had 4 cables out on the west coast of Africa, there were 3 cable systems that were down on the east coast to South Africa and then to Europe. Same story. So there was pressure on just about 2-3 cables to just carry the entire traffic. So this question is extremely relevant, and I think it's one of the, let me say, learning points that will come out of this whole saga that happened. This unprecedented, maybe like my co-panelist said, novel kind of a situation, especially good for Africa. I think now the regulators, the government, I don't know, even the AU hasn't come out with a statement. I was expecting that AU or ECOWAS will come out with a statement. This hasn't happened. So it's like the waking up is still yet to happen. So we need to now begin to plan carefully as to how to diversify our cable. Because look, we cannot, satellite is great. Yes, satellite is great because it's always on, and satellite, but you see, we are looking at huge volumes of information. Now, if you're looking at huge volumes of information and cost, because we want everybody to be connected, then satellite doesn't become the preferred option. And satellite only carries about less than 0.5% of global internet traffic. So there's a lot of work for us to do in Africa. Let me put it together, because you cannot look at Ghana in isolation. It has to be an African situation. So basically, we now need to look at the connectivity, on-land connectivity. What is on-land connectivity like? Fiber cuts don't only happen in the sea. Even on-land is serious. It's rampant on land, and there's no legislation that governs it. So we have a lot of work to do, and I'm sure the regulators, the governments, and everybody are gearing up, because it's a wake-up call for all of us. So thank you for now. This is what I'll say in my submission on that question. I'm sure my co-panelists will add more.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Odois. So, Mr. Asumi, do you want to add something?
Yes. From the list of the cables that we mentioned earlier, is SAT3, one and WAX. That was the order of installation. So ACE is closer to the coast of Abidjan, then SAT3. And so that is how the faults were also reported. SAT3 occurred on the 14th, about 5:31 UTC. We got information that ACE had occurred earlier. And then that afternoon, WAX also occurred. So these 4 cables were affected, but the other cables like GLO1, Equiano, and then there's the latest one, which is 2Africa. They also go through the same office. Yes, but they were not affected. So probably they are far away, a bit far away from the canyon. And I want to say that there's a Congo Canyon also in place, which is more or less, I think, the biggest in the world also. That's the largest canyon. And for that one, the Congo River enters the sea. So the valley is deeper and is causing more trouble. So most of the time you have cable cuts down south. And so there were studies among the cable operators to see how they can hang the cables across the canyon. And that has been a very difficult task. So they are involving other parties like the Alcatel Submarine Network that Mr. Odo mentioned, and other parties in the submarine world to see how best they can lay cable across that canyon, because that canyon extends deep into the ocean. And so to avoid them, it means cost. You have to lay cable and go around and then come back in line. It will be a very financial burden to the operators. And for these 4 cables that were affected close to Abidjan, for the past 20 years or so, that session, this is the very first time SAT3, for example, is recording cable cuts. So for over 22 years, that session was stable with the cables passing through them. So it's a wake-up call to see how best we can navigate when we are laying new cables and we meet canyons. As Mr. Odo said, in some cases, you cannot simply avoid them. Trying to go around them, you spend so much that it will defeat the whole purpose of the project. So it's a challenge that the cable industry, I'm sure after this episode, we all come together and then think of what can be done to surmount this challenge. So as I said, Congo Canyon is there. It's more serious and it has caused a lot of breaks, but we still have cables going across them. And they are looking at hanging the cables across the canyon. I don't know how they will do it, whether they will mount some pillars or bridges. I don't know, but the discussions are ongoing. So this is the latest issue that is coming on regarding the canyon close to Abidjan, the Lac Tron Fan. That is the name of the canyon. So for now, GLO1, Equiano, and 2Africa, they are a bit far from the canyon and nothing occurred. So now you have to wait for the report from ACE, NIN1, and WAX. Then we can arrive at the conclusion as to whether it's the same seismic or landslide that occurred, but it maybe couldn't reach far enough to affect 2Africa, Equiano, and GLO. Then geologists and other bodies can come in and then study the terrain. So as I said, for the past 20 years or so, this is the first time that session they are recording cable fault. Meanwhile, SAT3 cable have been running through this canyon. So that is a bit that I will add.
Yeah, okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Asumi. I will invite Dr. Ayano if he has some perspective on that. But before he comes in, you keep mentioning Kanyon. Can you tell your audience what is Kanyon? So if you can come down small for, especially we have students on the platform too as well.
Okay, hello. So
yes,
Canyon
yeah,
is the canyon is more or less like a gorge, as I said, or a narrow valley with steep sides. So let's take it maybe on the flat land. The portion has erosion. When it rains, water finds its level, so it will create some trench, and with time the trench will be deepened. And so assuming you are laying a cable across it or a rope perpendicular to this canyon, with time, debris, rocks will go through the canyon, the path, and the cables will find this, will be at the mercy of the canyon and the debris. And in some cases, if the sides break in, then they will bury the cables in this narrow valley that we are talking about. And that's how come the faults occur on the cables. So a canyon is, in simple terms, just a deep, narrow valley with steep sides on the seabed. I don't know whether I'm clear. It's clear.
Yes,
As
yes.
always said,
yeah.
On the seabed, you have valleys, you
okay.
have mountains, sea mounts. So canyon is just a deep valley, narrow with steep sides. Yeah.
All right. Thanks for that terminology. At least.
So maybe you can use God or
God. Okay.
Yeah. But those are called submarine canyons because you can have similar gorges on land also.
Thank you so much. We'll add it to our vocabulary when it comes to internet infrastructure. Thank you very much. Okay. So, Dr. Would you want to add something?
Yes. I just want to provide some statistics regarding fiber and submarine fiber cables in the west coast of Africa. So currently, unless this according to telegeography, okay. So for our students and faculties doing research in this area, one of your sources will be telegeography. You can actually find a map of where all the fibers in the whole world, the global fiber maps all over. You will that's submarine fiber maps. You can get information from that. So there are about eight submarine fiber that passes through the west coast of Africa. Okay, and Mr. Odoi says something, and I would like to hammer on that. Some of these issues is policy driven, or the regulator needs some kind of policy to solve these problems. Okay, there are about 8. These out of the 8 that passes through West Africa, all of them terminate in Nigeria. When I say terminate, it means they have fiber stations. It ends at, you can actually access it from Nigeria. Benin has 3, Togo has 3, Ghana has 6 out of the 8. Ghana has 6, Ivory Coast has 6, and I think the rest of the West African coast, there are 1, Sierra Leone 1, Liberia 1, etc. So that's how come, if you look at the statistics from NetBlocks actually monitors all internet traffic in the whole world. NetBlocks, places like Liberia, Sierra Leone, etc., some had 100% blackouts because all their fiber lines went off, and if there were no satellite or alternatives, it means they had 100% or almost 100% network cuts. Now, the unfortunate thing is that all these 8 terminate in Europe before they go to North America. All the 8, they are terminating in Europe, either Portugal or other places close to Europe. And before you can uplink to North America, that is New York or anywhere in North America, in the east coast of North America, there are only 2 cables in the west line of Africa. When I say the west line of Africa, that would be West Africa the western north of Africa, then the western of Central and South Africa. So where you have countries like Angola, Namibia, Gabon, Cameroon, etc. They are in the western side of either Central or Southern Africa. There are only two fiber, a submarine fiber, and this terminates in Brazil. So what it, assuming we even had some kind of fiber from, say, either Cote d'Ivoire, Nigeria, or Benin, Nigeria, that goes to North America, we wouldn't have had this severe form of outage. So you asked your first question, how come we had about 4 fiber companies, all of them? This is simple, costing in terms of, so Doc, you have run, for example, you have run an infrastructure business, and then you are hired to do some kind of infrastructure, say between UPSA campus and Accra Central for company A. You do your surveys, you do your mapping, you know the layout, you know all the contours, you know where, and then the following year, another company comes to give you the same job. You have mastered the area, so you are going to save costs. And because you know that unless you are restricted to what kind of map you should do your laying, or you should draw your cables, you are likely to have, say, connection A and connection B, probably very close to each other, because you've done the survey and you know the terrain. Okay, so even according to telegeography, you will see that these cables, the one that were breached, the 4 that are breached at the same time, they are likely to be very close to each other, if the map is anything to go right. And I encourage faculty members and our students to go to telegeography to look at some of these maps. You see that they are quite close to each other on the map, except that you won't get the distance from, say, between A's and SAT3. You won't get the actual distance. The map is not able to give you that. But just looking at the map visually, you will see that they are likely to. And most of these were, how do you call it, laid or built by the same companies. So this probably accounted for having multiple fibers by different companies being breached at the same time. Some of these issues can be resolved with policy. Can we have AU? So I'll give an example. You know, we have AFTA. AFTA is looking at trade, but you cannot have any serious trade without internet connectivity. So can AFTA also consider some of these things? That why can't we have some kind of all these organizations coming together from the regulator's point of view to say, we are not going to give license for anybody to do anything that is passing where we already have it.
Hello, Doc. Doc was providing very insightful information. He's frozen.
Yes,
Okay,
I think he's off. Okay,
Sorry?
he's back now. He's back. He's back.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. No.
There are other solutions that can.
Oh, we missed you briefly.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yes.
So I was saying, I ended, I don't know where I got to, but I ended up by saying that there are 2 solutions. One from the infrastructure level, where, for example, in granting licenses, we wouldn't want to grant license to where we have more than enough, because having 8 passing through the West Coast, all heading towards Europe, is enough. Why don't we give license or consider a license of a fiber layer that is targeting either North America or Central or South America? Then in such circumstances, we wouldn't have the impact as we saw from 14th, is it 14th March or so. Then the second.
Okay, hello, Doc. I think we will move on. I think, Doc, you are getting...
is at the service level, there are things in those aspects that has to be addressed at the third me.
Okay. All right. Doc, you keep freezing, but we'll come back to you. We'll come back to you. You are getting into the way forward, which is very, very, very insightful. So we'll come back to you at the moment, we have been able to establish what actually happened. And we have also alluded to the possible causes. Of course, we said we are not too sure of exactly what happened. So the next set of questions, which I was going to handle, had to do with why it happened. But I see that we have addressed that in a way. But let me just ask this on that note. I mean, why did it happen? Of course, some reasons, possible causes like seismic activity and all that. I want to find out from the panelists. You indicated that yes, fiber cats okay, they do okay, right? But then we don't get to notice them because of redundancies. In this particular case, because of the scale or the number of cables involved, that is why it's had this kind of impacts. Now, for educational purposes, would you want to delve into the common causes of damages to fiber, undersea fiber cables, so that we can get an idea of this critical infrastructure which carries inter-country traffic being subjected to damages. Then well, I think I'll pause here because I don't want us to go into the solution. So can you tell us the possible causes, the common ones, and at least just to make some sense out of the threat sources for this important infrastructure element of the internet, as we are all mindful of. Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you,
maybe,
Doc.
yeah,
Also very important, another important question. Yeah, I'll give you a little bit of, I'll bring it in simple terms. Yeah, three categories. There are three categories of cable threats. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Odo, we can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, so there are about three categories. There are just three categories of submarine cable threats. One, these are natural causes, just like we've described. Those can be like seismic activity, landslides, earthquakes, maybe cable abrasion, whereby the cable is laid on the rock, and maybe it's after rubbing over the rock for some time, the cable gets damaged. So that is just about 10% of all cable faults. Then you have what we call unintentional human causes. Unintentional. Oh, these are unintentional, so it's not intended. There's no intention, but basically, that's where we refer to as like this shipping, these fishing activities, like fishing activities. These are human activities. Say, like for instance, these guys who have these rogue vessels on the ocean, and then they lay anchor anywhere. They lay anchor anywhere that they feel like, laying anchor, and they mostly enter into, like, we have no anchorage zones. That is, these are zones where ships are not supposed to lay anchor or drop anchors. They do them, and sometimes they even cut off their communication. I can give you a typical example. In Ghana, right here in Ghana, there was a time when it happened to one of the cable systems, in that a rogue vessel actually it actually landed on the cable, and they shut off their communication system. So we couldn't reach out to them to like communicate to them to tell them that they were in the anchorage zone. And we had to mobilize like the Navy to go and chase after these guys. So these are things that you would never know. These are things that happen behind the scenes, from the NOC people. I'm glad that my colleague Andrew is a NOC guy. He will tell you more. And so we have all these things happening. So basically, these are the human activities. This account for about 70% of all damages. So you have a scenario where this fishing anchoring, some of the some of the like fish, vessels, they do what they call pair trawling, whereby they have seabed and they sweep the seabed just because they are fishing. And the nets get entangled with the fiber cables and they drag them until they break. So that is the most common. So basically, it's human activity, such as also drilling. You sometimes can have drilling activities happening, where they are not supposed to drill. They are prospecting for oil. They go drill some areas, and then at the end of the day, they damage the cable. So this accounts for 70% of the damages. In fact, when you look at the intentional causes, those are like my colleague panelist said, there's sabotage, like cable thefts. We've had a situation in Africa where a cable was stolen under the ocean for scrap. So a whole wide range of things happen that can cause this faults to happen. But these days, most telcos have invested in what we call AIS systems, that monitor these cables. They are like more or less satellite monitoring tools. And we also work with the maritime authorities and the Navy, so there's coordinated effort and there's a lot of education that we do. And we have cable awareness programs that we run with all these people. And also one of the most important things that we do now is that the cable routes are all gazetted. And these cable routes that are gazetted are given to the vessels. The vessels have them. Actually, the vessels have them. So they know where our cable routes are. So they don't anchor in those zones. But that is also a challenge because and if they tend to sabotage, which is more like it's a dichotomy. How do you balance this act? You understand what I'm saying? But this is where we are saying that governments, the policy guys, the legislation that should cover all these things should be very solid, especially like in Africa. We are just coming into the cable business from the west coast of Africa. That was SAT3. You understand? So we have a lot of work to do. That's why I keep saying that I'm happy that this is starting from the university. We have a lot of work to do. I mean, industry has to collaborate with like university, like your research people. We have to get everybody on board. We have to work together to actually resolve this challenge. Otherwise, we will not be part of the global ecosystem that is coming. This incident has really opened our eyes. It's taught us that Africa, we are still asleep. There's still a lot of work to be done. We don't have, like I said, cable diversity. What is cable diversity? It's just a matter of why do you put all your eggs in one basket? Why is everything going to Europe? Why don't we have enough cables going to South America? Of course, you can say that the business case is not fully developed. The business case, because cost is a very heavy cost. I mean, laying a cable to South America and then to America, you're looking at $1 billion, roughly. Maybe the business case hasn't developed. But I see the growth in mobile, the usage, the growth in internet penetration, the content that we are driving from Africa. We should be able to get governments to, that's why ECOWAS, I expect ECOWAS to come out and say something about this. ECOWAS has been silent. We haven't heard from them. I don't know if I could be wrong. I could be wrong. It's possible they've made a statement. But this cannot be done by a single country. A single country cannot work on this. It's not a consortium issue of cable operators. This has to be governments coming to work together. So there are issues that we have to really work on and resolve. I don't know if I've answered your question, but this is what I can say for
yes,
now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Odoi. I think we are losing some time. So I will want us to move to the next set of questions. But of course, the other panelists can chip in with the next set of questions. So I will hand over to my co-chair for us to move to the next set of questions. Yeah, Dr. Akrofi.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Osowari. And thank you once again, the panelists, for this exciting. I'm really enjoying it. I don't know for the others, but I'm really enjoying this discussion. And for the lack of want of time, I would like us to continue with our set of questions. So we want to know the assessment, the impact of the disruption on businesses, the undersea cable providers, the telcos, and then the government. We want to have an assessment of the impact on all these bodies, businesses. For we all know, like during those periods, if you want to do even online transaction, bank to bank and things like that, it was difficult. Some of the banks, it was almost impossible. And if you don't take care, your money will go and lock somewhere, and it will take about 1 week for you to be able to retrieve it. So we all saw the impact on businesses, but we also want to know about the undersea cable providers, the telcos, and then the government. So I would like Dr. Ayeno to pick this one first, and then you come to the other panelists. So Dr. Ayeno, you can just give us a gist about all these things, how it impacted.
Okay, so there were serious income loss to businesses that basically thrive on the internet. That's the first one I'll say. So, for example, all the other one, boats, etc. For to about 3 days, some were not able to function. Okay, so you can calculate if you can calculate an income. They make an income stream between 600 to, okay. So imagine losing that income for that for that number of days, and if you survive on that, there are others that are yet to be estimated in terms of real figures. So, for example, if your hospital platform was driven on an internet service, that means you could not provide those services and so on. Now, if you were an organization like WAEC, and your students or your candidates were assessing their results around that time, it means they will not be able to have access. These are difficult to calculate in terms of monetary values. Okay. Universities that had their LMS, their learning management systems, their online platforms, etc., leveraging on internet, it means they were not able to provide those services. The banking sector, the example you cited. So there are real and not very easy to calculate in terms of monetary values, how much we lost. But it created a lot of backlog for services that, so for example, if the passport processing centers could not access those platforms, it means they were not able to provide their services during that time. Meetings that are held online, video conferencing sessions that are held online, all these were affected. Some some running into almost a week, they could not access these services. So there were heavy impacts during the network outage. Okay, there are other considerations in terms of maybe let me stop here, and then when we move to the next, where we talk about solutions, etc., I'll mention those. But any service that's dependent on internet to run went off for at least not less than 3 days if they were depending on ISPs or NMOs that operated on those fibers.
Thank you very much, Dr. So in summary, it affected productivity, and then it affected sales, it affected revenues and things like that. I want us to touch on the telcos, the impact on the telcos, because the load was on them, everything was on them to deliver and to make sure that we have internet access. So I would like to touch on the telcos, because I know they were running around trying to get data from other places and things like that. So let's touch on that one too. Mr. Sumin, you can come in.
Okay, thank you. Well, for the telcos, okay, let me also talk about the undersea cable operators themselves. You know, okay. It costs so much to repair a cable in the sea, in the region of about $1.5 to $3 million. And so at the end of the day, it will come in as a operation and maintenance cost. So it will increase your quarterly operation and maintenance cost. And it's a burden that was not expected. For the mobile operators, you know, roaming services is one critical service that people enjoy when they travel outside. And so those ones will be very impacted. And this time, most companies were affected. Assuming one company was able to restore services, then which means people will churn, customers will churn. Before everything is restored, we've lost a lot of customers, revenue and all that. And in the course of this outage, people had already loaded bundles, credits, and the only thing we can do to appease them is to refund their credits and all that. It's a major cost. And platforms like the apps where you used to manage your services, you need to resort to short codes and all that. And so that is also going to slow down the business and all that. So there are some of the effects that the NMOs and the cable operators will suffer. Yeah. So it's a big cost. You can't quantify them number. It's a very huge cost. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
With the government and other things. Or this it's okay now for now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sumin. Mr. Odoi, you can also come in to give your view on that.
Yeah, I think my colleague has said it all. These costs are really quite high. As if you are a cable operator, from the cable operation angle, if you don't have any maintenance agreement and your cable is not insured, then you are in big trouble, because you're going to be paying in excess of $5 million. You know, and like my colleague said, this is not planned. But of course, we know cuts do happen. So normally the cables are insured. So the insurance companies come in after the cuts happen. And because it's force majeure, meaning that nobody knew, it's what we say an act of nature. So what it means is that the contractual agreements that the cable operators have with the MNOs means that at that particular point, they cannot be held responsible, because it's kind of an act of nature. So they get savings in that, when it comes to that, they get savings. But the telcos, unfortunately, because they deal with the mass, they deal with the numbers, they have end subscribers, and subscribers get inconvenienced. They are the ones who actually take the brunt of the whole thing. And like, for instance, let me give you one example. I mean, I wanted to top up my electricity. I went to one of the vendors and they said, submarines are down, so I can't buy electricity. And my electricity was very low. And I wondered, how come submarines down? Submarines in the sea is supposed to be international. So how come I can't buy electricity? You know, it didn't make sense to me, but then I realized that we've gone too much into the cloud business. People think about cloud solutions. So these cloud solutions don't sit in Ghana, they sit elsewhere. And because all this content is sitting outside the shores of this country, it's also creating a lot of problems, because ideally, all the like utility services and government services, all these things should run without any interruption. But because everybody's on the internet platform and all the platforms are hosted outside, we had a double hit. And that is one of the reasons why we really had a hard time dealing with this issue. Yeah, but I also want to commend the MNOs. They've done fabulously well because within 2-3 days, most of them were able to restore to a certain, say like 90% of the traffic, and they are still doing well, even though the cable repair has only just begun. Like Andrew said, only SAT3 is up. I know that on the 17th, ACE will come up, and then subsequently ME1 will also come up. But we have a lot of work to do. That's what I'll add for now.
Okay, thank you very much. I believe the question has been dealt with completely and adequately. I want to go back to my co-chair, continue with the set of questions. Those who can take over.
Okay, thank you very much, my co-chair. To make up for time, I think we'll go straight to the way forward. Can we look at how the services are being restored? We noticed that within some few days, I think 5 days, you mentioned 3 days or so, we started getting some internet services. Yeah, so can you give us insight into the recovery and the restoration process? Because here are cables that have been damaged. We were told that it will take a minimum of 5 weeks. I think that was the updates from the NCA. It will take a minimum of 5 weeks to restore services fully. But meanwhile, progressively, the MNOs, the telcos were restoring services, and within some days, we saw the situation eased. Now, I want to find out, did you have a pre-arrangement with other partners such that now you have a cable cut, then you needed to move on to alternative cabling system, right? Can you give us an insight into how that worked out? Because it's an indication of business continuity strategy. So instead of the 5 weeks, minimum of 5 weeks restoration, we started getting internet services. So if you can give us some insights into the recovery and the restoration processes. Yeah. Let me start with Mr. Asuni this time.
Thank you. Yeah, as you can see, there are some recoveries, but it's not fully restored, especially when you look at certain services. For internet connections, fine. Once you're able to route your cable, all cables and internet connections, incidentally, the route is toward the north. So from Ghana, going towards Abidjan, Senegal to Portugal. Then you hit Europe and Americas. Now, people were supposed to contact other operators whose cable down south. Capacity is available, has to be purchased. And in that case, you don't have time to bargain any quote that you receive. You just have to do your connections and then restore. But with some latency, because this time you're going down South Africa, then around Kenya, through Egypt, Suez Canal, before you get to Europe. So those are the channels that most telcos and then cable operators were going through. So one critical example was, Togo. So the alternate route is to use terrestrial networks to hit to Togo, for example. And then once you hit Togo, Equano cable is installed in Togo unfortunately, we don't have Equinor cable in Ghana. This is the Equinor cable that Odo mentioned that was installed by Google. And so that one goes down southwards. So you can imagine the latency, the length of the transmission path before you can hit the internet pop. So those are the alternate routes. So we are going to learn a lesson that as we are establishing connection to internet pop to Europe through the northern session, for example, from Ghana, Abidjan to Portugal, now we'll be looking down south so that in case there's a break or catastrophic disruption at the north side, you will have the southern section to pass your traffic. So this is also a learning curve. But as I said, the restorations were done on cables who have capacities going down south, then coming up behind Africa, Kenyan direction through Egypt, and then back to Europe. And as Doc mentioned, there were services that were still running like the Google, YouTube, because of the caching system that some of the companies have. You know, the main path to the internet, assuming people are searching for maybe UPSC admissions, what is the cost structure? Once the system sees that a lot of people are accessing that site, then the telcos can download all information concerning this to a cache, to a server here in Ghana. So those services can be accessed right in Ghana. So when the internet outage was experienced, those are some of the remedies that came to support people who are accessing YouTube and or other like Netflix. So you have to have Netflix cache, YouTube cache, Google cache, Facebook cache, so that you can cater for those customers accessing those services. But as I said, alternate capacities have to be looked for down south to South Africa, and then to India, back to Europe. And the cost you can your guess is as good as mine. So those are the routes that the telcos have to use to restore most of their services. There are other services which are more or less like a lease line. So you have a lease line going to Germany, then it will be a bit difficult to get a different route to the last destination. But if you just simply need to connect to internet pop, then that doesn't matter which part of the world you can get a connection. If it's through India, Malaysia, whatever, you establish your temporary connections to those places, and then your internet traffic is on. So this is what I would say. These are the alternate routes that people, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Asumi. I think I'll go to Dr. Ayeno, then Mr. Odo will come in as far as this question is concerned. Yeah, Dr. Ayeno, yeah, so in terms of the recovery and the restoration processes, yeah.
Okay, so the recovery by Monday, 18th March, that's after 5 days, we have had close to about 95% recovery. For me, I'll look at recovery that's probably within 24 hours maximum, and as fast as 6 hours minimum. Looking at the level of the outage, we should have had 100% recovery within this period, within the first 24 hours. Maybe the first 6 hours should have had about 70% recovery. And within 24 hours, maybe 100% recovery of specifically local content. And let me define local content in this context. Local content will be one, a platform that delivers services targeting people living in Ghana. Okay, a platform that delivers services targeting maybe 95 or almost the main target of that platform is people living in Ghana. And two, this platform is owned by a company in Ghana or a Ghanaian company. Okay, so even if it's the company is owned by investors, but that company is operating in Ghana. For me, within the first 6 should have had 100% recovery if it is based on local content. So which kind of platform will fall in this category? I'll start with our own university's platform, our admission platform, our university's websites, medical services to Ghana, and it's operated by a Ghanaian. We have the necessary, human resource. We have regulatory and policy framework that should allow this to happen. And I can give an example for it. We have GIX. GIX is Ghana Internet Exchange. And then GIX is operated by an association, Ghana Internet Exchange Association. So the and individuals are all members of this, and they exchange internet out from the rest of the world. As long as your server is resident in Ghana or you are catching in Ghana, you are within a national local area and should be able to operate. In fact, the organization that had their platform in this context were those that most of their users didn't even see that they've gone, and they were utilizing the GIX facility that ensures local internet exchange. And that is what all the sub-regions are doing. We've had probably much more severe fiber cuts. For us in West Africa, this is the first time. But in parts where they often experience tsunami, hurricane. In 2012, for example, there was, Hurricane Hetty or Hurricane Randy, which affected a huge side of the east coast of North America. But within some few hours, all those services in that area, even though it was probably much severe than this, most of these services were running. And it's because of local internet exchange. So it is something that we need to look at. And if this should happen, because they are unpredictable, especially the aspect that is even the non-intentional human errors that leads to fiber cuts or through natural disasters, it is difficult to predict. But once you have, you are utilizing your local internet exchange, you are able to provide services that are meant for people within your, and then that can be extended to West Africa, that can be extended to East and West Africa. We have associations, we have networks, not associations, we have networks like WACRIN. WACRIN is West and Central Africa. Once we are on this platform, for example, we wouldn't expect that, say, universities or educational sectors or research centers like CSIR, for example, will go off if they were leveraging this network. The same thing in Ghana, we are using Garnet. If Garnet was hacked through whichever that Mr. Subi mentioned, it means all the educational facilities that are hooked onto network, they can very fast. So we should look at the strategy for recovery. Should look at first local content, so that services that are meant for Ghanaians or services that are meant for people residing in Ghana, if we are cut out from the rest of the world or the rest of the continent, at least local content internet should not suffer the same problem, because we have the 3 dimensions of resource: human, policy, or legal framework, and also the infrastructure to be able to do that locally. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Dr. Ayano. Yeah. Great. Yeah. Thanks so much for the insights concerning the local content. It's very, very important and strategic. Okay. So Mr. Odoy will wrap up on the issue of recovery and restoration process. Having in mind that we were told it's going to take 5 weeks, a minimum of 5 weeks to restore fully. But we see progressive restoration. So if you can give us some insights into that.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Manuel Osuwari. Yeah, they said a minimum of 5 weeks, minimum. But looking at what we know, because we are monitoring the situation, I think that, let's say by end of May, we should be having full restoration by end of May. I don't know if Andrews can confirm that, but I'm sure we should be having full restoration by end of May. But one of the things I also want to chip in is that we see policy failure here, because just like Dr. Ayeno said, who is a referee to ensure that my utility service like ECG is hosted in Ghana? Who's going to check this? If somebody can sell software to ECG and it's hosted in the cloud somewhere, and it doesn't work when submarine cables are down, it's not a service. It's not a who is to ensure? Is it that because I know we have a National Information Technology Agency. What is their role? So we need to be bold. We need to be bold to point out all these issues so that legislation can be done, so that we can have proper guidance, we can have proper policies that will come out to ensure that we have a rock solid cyberspace that we can all operate in. At the moment, there's a decoupling between cyberspace and infrastructure is with respect to submarine cables, and not even submarine cables alone, even terrestrial cables as well. So basically, I think that I'm very excited about this forum. I'm thinking that especially the best place to have this discussion is the university, and people like me from industry. We want to put our service at your disposal. If you want us to come and have a lecture, whatever we can do to, because we believe the youth need to know these things. They need to be empowered. They need to know, how these things can be resolved, and they need to get this experience. Industry players like Andrews and myself, we hardly have the opportunity to interact with academia. You understand? We want to share this knowledge. We want to come and work with you so that you equip some of these things. So this is this little addition that I'll make to what the beautiful presentation that.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Odo.
Panelist.
All right, so I think we will move forward with the last bit of the question. Already we have alluded to the last bit of the question, which is to see how best we can move forward and avoid or prevent such an occurrence. I'll just ask this question, then my co-chair will come and wrap up with the last set of questions. I want to find out this low Earth orbit satellites. It has been proffered as alternative solution to the fiber cable, the undersea fiber cable. Can you give us insight into as to whether they can really be the alternative to fiber optic cables, that is undersea fiber optic cable? Let me start with Dr. Ayeno.
You should have started with the infrastructure, yes. but let me share my layperson's experience.
Yes,
alternative use satellite. Yeah, but I should have started with Mr. Suvin and Aklodwe on
I'm alternating the first come. Dr. Odo has always been the first, and so
I'll give you an example. So, satellites will give us very high latency. Okay, which means we are likely to have epileptic internet connectivity. You just look at those who have DSTV at home. Consider this: even when articulator passes behind your house, or when there is a little rain shower, you see what happens to your connectivity. That is my layperson's experience, or how best I can explain what you should expect. Those calling. I mean, there are advanced technologies that can be robust enough to withstand harsh weather conditions, etc. But it's huge investments. It's huge investments, and the location and all that. So, like I said, my layperson's knowledge on this tells me that there are better alternatives that we can consider.
Okay, so our engineers, Mr. Odo, can you come in? We've heard about this low Earth orbit satellites. Can you speak to it? Oh, sorry. Dr. Ayano, you are still speaking, eh? Okay, Dr. Ayano is still... Dr. Ayano, were you adding something?
Looking at that as an immediate alternative here. Okay.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Looks like we still have some issues.
I was
with the
saying that
internet.
I'll defer the rest of my comment.
Okay, all right. So let me quickly go to Mr. Odoy, then Mr. Asumin, then we quickly wrap up with my co-chair. I can see that our audience will have some questions, so we want to quickly give them the opportunity. Okay,
Yeah, there are
Mr.
a number
Odoy.
of questions in the chat. So when you are done.
Perfect. Okay, so Mr. Odoy, quickly, then Mr. Asumin can come in.
Okay, let me a quick one. I think you heard about Starlink. You heard about Starlink. These are
Yes,
low
yes,
orbit satellites,
Starlink.
which are very, very useful, very helpful. You see, even the gadgets, the handsets, let me say the devices, the terminal devices for these are quite expensive, and cost is quite high. And like Dr. Ayeno said, you have some latency issues, and then if you look at it, satellites usually is at areas where we don't have cable, areas that are not reachable, areas that maybe it's a war zone. Then of course satellites become very important. But where you have cables, you prefer them because the volumes of information are much more reliable, and then you have faster connections. And most of these days, most of the applications are like huge bandwidth eaters. Let me put it that way. The applications that we are running these days like demand a lot of bandwidth. And with the cables, cost is lower, much lower, cost per unit, much lower to handle this kind of information highway. So basically, I think that even those satellites cannot be ruled out completely, and we shouldn't do that. We can have some minimum satellite connectivity in certain areas, like in certain hospitals that are critical, certain critical services like emergency services. All this should be backed up by satellite. It's not it should be. But on the whole, if you want to talk about reliability, faster connectivity, efficiency, and quality of service, then of course the cables are the number one you want to use. Yeah. So that is why it's important that we have very effective policies around it. So that's why we have to do a lot of cable awareness. We have to do everything possible to ensure that these cables are well protected.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Odoy. Mr. Asumi, yeah. So if you can kindly come in there.
With the satellite, the first thing that comes to mind is the latency. Everybody is talking about latency. So we look at it, if you compare with submarine optical cable, light travels through the optical medium almost at the speed of light in a vacuum. So assuming satellite from the Earth station to the satellite in space, the uplink, downlink, the hop is about 35,000 kilometers. Then from there, it will boom to the next Earth station, another 35,000 kilometers. So we are looking at 70,000 kilometers just to transmit from one Earth station to the another Earth station, even before you connect to terrestrial network to your destinations. And so the latency there is so much. Now, if you look at, for example, Sat3 cable from Portugal through West Africa all the way to South Africa, and then to continue to Mauritius, to India and Malaysia, the total length of this cable is just 28,500 kilometers. And now, even the longest cable in the world now, which is to Africa, that's the only cable now which is circling the whole of Africa. So that one is the cable of the future. I'm sure it will solve some of the issues we are discussing now. So if the northern side is broken, you route to the southern and then go around Africa. No, that cable, which is the longest in the world, is even 45,000 kilometers. It's even way below one hop from a satellite from a F station to a satellite to another F station, which is 70,000 kilometers is too much. So for the latency argument, people will not like to go satellite way. Despite that is able to cover areas where cables cannot go. And the reliability too was mentioned, the weather conditions, heavy rains and other atmospheric disturbances will interfere the signal for satellites. Unlike fiber optic cable, you don't have any interference in terms of electromagnetic and whatever. You don't have that. For coverage, satellite can do that because hinterlands where we don't have telephone infrastructure or during disaster moments, fine. F station can do that. Now, even the cost of installing submarine cable is high initially, but with time, you see that it's worth investing in a submarine cable. If you look at even the bandwidth for the submarine is about several gigs to now have hundreds of terabits per second. But for satellite, it's just a few tens of gigabits. Now, the latest cable that I mentioned to Africa, the capacity is going to be 180 terabits. And that is going to do much. It's going to serve the Internet of Things ideology that is coming, 5G, and they're hungry for data. That is what is going to solve the data, if I would say, capacity crunch issues. So F-station and satellite is also good, but it has its own application that you can look at it on its own rights. When it comes to weather forecasting and television like DSTV, it's doing well at that side. When it comes to rural telephony, as I mentioned, another important thing for satellite is for synchronization. Is a primary timing source for cell phones and then some pages and other systems in the world. So I will sum it in a whole. If you have a caterpillar, it can go to hinterlands where a four-wheel cannot go. As when you bring the caterpillar on the motorway, how fast can it run? So they belong to their own area. Yes. So
that's a nice one.
They are all important, but nice they different needs. But the current way people are hungry for data, everybody is browsing, WhatsApping, and Internet of Things, as I mentioned, the submarine cable system that can give it a solution. That's why we still have to look at the ways of installing submarine cables to avoid the issue that confronted us 14th March. So we urge fiber operators to invest in 2 or more cables for redundancy's sake. It's unfortunate that we had 4 of the cables going down. But in most cases, we have maybe 1 cable going down because the other systems are up. The restoration time is quicker. So satellite should belong to where it plays in function very well, and then submarine cable also will do its bit. If there are other questions, maybe I can answer. But
all right, that's fine. That's fine. So I'll thanks so much for the analogy. Caterpillar is the satellite, then the four-wheel is the fiber optic cable. That's what a good summary. Yeah. Okay. So I will defer to my co-chair to wrap up with the last set of questions. But as a matter of fact, we have touched on some of them. So let's see how it goes, because if we want to go to the general audience, if they have any questions, then we wrap up. Okay, Dr. Akrofi, take over.
Yes. I think we want to go to the question time. And I'm proposing that we have part 2 of this webinar, because there are other issues that we have to actually touch on. And I'm thinking of immediate solutions when something of this sort happens. Immediate solutions, something that we can map out and put down and say that if this thing should happen again, these are the areas that we would quickly touch on to restore service. So we want to look at immediate solutions. And then you also want to touch on future solutions like Mr. Odoye was talking about, what do you call it? Use the term.
Cable diversity.
Diversifying, yes, yes. So we can also delve deep into that area and then learn more from it. So we will package all of that and then we will do part 2. And this time you will not be looking at what's happened and all those things. You go straight to the solution aspect, and we will touch on, first of all, the immediate solutions that we can all employ when some of these things happen. And then secondly, the future ones where we have to bring in policies, where you have to do investments, and where you have to talk to bodies here and there and all those things. So we will look at that. But for now, I think we can end here and then ask questions for our panelists to answer them. So I will give the floor to Dr. Foida, for him to moderate the questions. Then we will come back and then wrap up everything, because we've spent more than 1.5 hours, and I think everything should have been even 1.5 hours. So we are eating into too much time. Let's do it fast and then wrap up. So Dr. Foida, you can take over and then look at the questions for panelists to answer, and then we wrap up.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Vice Dean. Such an insightful day we've had. So we just want to quickly zoom into some of the questions that our participants have shared. I think I have one here from Kenneth. He's asking what some of the risks are with the cable engineers when they are laying cables under the sea. Maybe if we can have just a response from one of you. Mr. Joseph or Mr. Andrew, one of you can respond to it. Then we go to the next set of questions.
I think this is for Andrew. Andrew. Okay, let me just say something. When it comes to undersea cables, you don't have human beings going down there. We have divers who do specialized duties at the seabed, but usually we have remote vehicles. They are kind of robots. They're like robots that go down there to do the cable laying. In fact, they do all the work. They are deployed from the vessels that lay these cables, these sea vessels that lay the cables. I think what would be best for us, I don't know if Andrew will agree to this, but maybe we should find time and come and do a presentation of how some of these things are done. It will really be exciting for your students to see how cable ships lay these cables. It will really open a lot of, some of them will become interested. Some of them want to become submarine cable engineers. You never know.
Sure.
So I think that's something that we should maybe look into. Yeah, sure. But it's done remotely. I mean, it's done by ROVs. They move under the seabed and they are deployed. They are controlled from the shore, and some are even from the ships. And it's quite a very complicated process, but that's how they do it. Maybe Andrew would like to chip in.
Yes, if you want to have a bite, Mr. Andrews, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, Mr. Odoye has said it all. The laying of the cable is not done directly by divers per se. So he mentioned the ROV, the remote operated vehicles. There's also another system that we call submarine cable plow. It's just like a plow that we see on the farms. So they lower this equipment down there, and it's areas that the cable needed to be buried, about 1 meter or 2 meters. This automatic plows does that. So as it digs, the cable is pushed down there, and then behind it, it backfills the trench throughout. And this is done after a cable ship has done survey and looked at the safe routes, avoiding sea mount, and where possible, maybe avoiding the canyons or the gorges and all that. So it's done by robots and it's safe. But another thing too is free at the cable stations. You know, the cable, the length of the cable from another country to we say another continent, because it's so the distance is so long, we have repeaters on the seabed. So after about 80 kilometers or so, the signal will be weakened. So we need some amplifier repeater to boost up for onward transmission. And those repeaters are active equipment. Once it's an amplifier, it needs power. So there's some fiber cable that you see in the middle. That is where you have the fiber strands that transport the information, data, video, everything. Then there's a cross section that is a copper tube running alongside. And the power system or the power equipment is in the cable stations. And so we apply about over 10,000 volts DC to this cable. And so that's how come ROVs was mentioned by Mr. Odi, so that direct human beings directly will not be touching the cables because of this higher power that is also running alongside the data.
Right.
So, and we at the cable stations to this power system that generates the DC power and connect to the cable. Minimum of 2 people to work on it at the same time. And we follow a stringent health and safety procedure to maintain this equipment. So it is safe. There are stringent procedures that the submarine industry has put up. Even the ICPC, there's a body called International Cable Protection Committee. They also have a framework by which all cable system operators can follow and then safely manage the cable systems. So it's quite safe.
Okay.
So I don't know whether I've answered the
I'm sure you have touched on it. And maybe you should add this to it in your response.
Okay.
One of our participants, Papa Kweku Kisi, he wants to know who actually bears the cost for the repairs and maintenance of the cables.
Yeah. So for the cable,
I see Dr. Ayano is smiling. Dr. Ayano, please, you have a bite to, when Mr. Andrew is done.
Yeah, then okay. Doctor, do you want to come on board? You want to take it?
Oh no, please answer. Please answer.
Okay. You know, so for the cable ownership, it's more or less a consortium base. So we have where we have the cable stations in various countries. There are various OPCOs in those countries who are, we will call them parties, and there are other bodies who came together from the beginning to invest into this cable. So they are owners or parties. So the cost is borne by these parties put together. So for SAT3, for example, there are about 36 parties that own this SAT3 cable network. So after a cable repair, the cost is shared among the parties according to your investment or your share in the cable system. And it will come in the form of operation maintenance cost. So it's not being borne by just one party. It's owned by a number of people, and we call them consortium. There are other cable systems that is privately owned, like I think MainOne. I think Mr. Odi will confirm MainOne, and then Glo 1 2 is also more or less privately owned. But ACE, for example, the landing station in Ghana is being managed by Dolphin Telecom.
Yeah.
Okay.
SAT3, the company managing is Vodafone, now Telecel. If you go to Abidjan, you have Côte d'Ivoire Telecom, Benin Telecom, Telecom South Africa. So those countries where we have SAT3 landing stations, those respective OPCOs in those countries do the management, and they are all shareholders of this cable system. So the other parties like AT&T, China Telecom, they don't have any landing station in their countries, but they invested from the beginning. They also signed the memorandum of understanding before the cable system was put up. So they are all owners, and they have capacity allocated to them based on their share, which they can also retail and share and make some profits. So when the cable is repaired, the cost is borne by all the members according to your share in the cable system, not just one single party.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Ayano. You want to have a?
Yeah, just let me chip in.
No. It's fine.
No, I just
it's
wanted
fine.
to chip
Yes. I think Mr. Esmin has said everything. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Mr. Joseph, I think you wanted to chip in something.
Yeah. He referred to my good friend Andrews referred to private cables, and because there are two different sets of cable systems. We have the consortium where MNOs come together to build, and then we have the private. cables system that can be owned by probably even, like if you look at Glo One, for instance, is owned by Glo Mobile. One individual owns the cable, So those are different scenarios. But in the case of private cables, normally what happens is that you have maintenance agreements with maintenance operating companies like ACMA. They do these things. And then, a lot of times these cables are insured. So there's insurance money as well that, we pay monthly, and then, yearly. There are yearly insurance levies that are paid. And based on that, the companies have to, those companies that we sign agreements with have to repair the cable.
Right.
Just like you have a car and then you have insurance on the car. And when there's a damage, the insurance company comes to cover.
Yeah.
So we also have that kind of arrangements with companies that do that specialize in that activity.
Okay, perfect. So, Mr. Joseph and Dr. Yeno, maybe if you can answer this one. Maximilian wants to know what government should be doing, including other stakeholders, that would help lessen the impact of future blackouts. Maybe one each or two each briefly should be okay.
Okay, so there is a law, since we are talking about government, we have what we call the Cybersecurity Act. And the Cybersecurity Act mandates the minister, okay, in this case, in this case, it will be the Minister of Communication and Digitalization, yes, to list what we call strategic, let me look for the word, there's a description that is given to the law talks about, just a minute.
Sure.
Yes, it's called critical information infrastructure. Okay. The section 35 of the law of the Cybersecurity Act talks about critical information infrastructure. What it means is that the minister must designate systems, computer systems. So it can be an internet service, it can be a computer software, or it can be anything that is used digitally to provide services, okay, or some kind of, so I'll give an example, ECG platform for buying electricity or for paying bills should be or may be classified as critical information infrastructure. Okay, so, and the minister has done that. There is a whole document in the National Security, the Cybersecurity Agency that has documented 12 large classes of critical information infrastructure. The question that every head of a government institution or even private institution must ask is, where are our services or where are our servers hosted? Are they hosted locally, or they are sitting somewhere in North America or in Asia or in Europe? The question talks about blackouts. As for the causes of the blackouts, we've already discussed that 3 causes can lead to that. But should that have severe impact, like what happened recently? For me, the answer would be no, if the measure by government has ensured that or has enforced that all critical infrastructure should be hosted in Ghana. If there is a blackout, these services can be run locally, because I don't see anybody in even in Ivory Coast or in UAE who wants to buy ECG, pay for ECG or buy it for what? It's a service that is only used in Ghana. And I'm just using this as an example. Why should a hospital like Rich Hospital, Korle Bu, Komfo-Anokye, etc., have a critical infrastructure that they are using to provide medical services, and the server is not sitting in Ghana? That is unacceptable. If there is a network knockout or a network outage, definitely such a platform cannot be operated. So for me, this is just one measure. all the critical infrastructure that has been identified in accordance with the Cybersecurity Act, all those systems should be hosted in Ghana. Even if they are hosted outside Ghana, they must have a replication or a backup or a redundancy in Ghana, so that in the case of a knockout or a network outage, we can rely on the replication or the backup to offer the services.
Wow, awesome. Thank you. Thank you very much. So I just want to let us to have one final question. Sorry to all those who asked questions, but because of our time, we want to take just a last one. We'll defer the rest of the questions for the part 2 of our webinar series. So just a last one from Professor Ebenezer Malcolm. I hope I got your name right, sir. He's asking if it is possible for the telcos to have internet access mix, where we can use like VSAT and undersea fiber optics connectivity. So briefly, if we can just touch on that so that we can wrap up with the session. Thank you very much. Mr. Joseph and Mr. Andrew.
I think Andrew, you want to take the first shot.
Yeah, okay. So if I get a question, is talking about integrating submarine fiber cable to a VSAT communication.
Yes.
Well, for the VSAT, its importance will be to serve remote places where we can lay fiber cables to. So for the submarine fiber infrastructure, we have interconnectivity with the terrestrial network and all kinds of network, including even satellites. And so it depends on how you want to use it. If you want to serve a remote place where even terrestrial network cannot reach, then you need that do satellite and VSAT. But mind you, there will be a bottleneck. So the capacity that can be accessed by such communities will be limited by the capacity that those VSATs can hold. For the submarine cable, well, as is being said, the capacity is limitless. It all depends on your terminal equipment. You are limited by capacity because of your terminal equipment. So satellites can be integrated easily. But what is the purpose? What is the kind of community you want to serve? Is it just a remote place, some remote hospital, or a small cottage, or a whole suburb, a whole like a whole region? There will be some capacity issues there too.
Right.
So it can be done.
Okay.
It can be done. Yeah. I don't know whether if you can find a question, but this is my response. So you can also add something and then fine tune it for me.
It's all right.
Thank you, Andrew. I think it's a simple answer. Yeah, I think it's a simple answer. It is already done. It is done. It's the same. It's the same MNOs and telcos who run both systems. So it is done. Interconnectivity is not an issue at all. What the issue is, let's say, assuming that all the submarines are down and everybody was on satellite, we'll not be able to transmit the information. It will become like another traffic jam. Let's say everybody gets to circle, from so many places because it's slow, is the latencies are high. So information that today we can access, almost no buffering. Now when we get to full and efficient, it's the total volume, is the volume that we are playing here with. Because so satellite is actually very good when it comes to, like Andrew said, remote areas where we cannot reach with fiber, or emergency services. Like I said, I mean, in the event of war or whatever, or like disasters, then satellite becomes very, 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 very important, because then with that we can actually access all the services that we want to access in that particular geographical region. But when you look at today's cyber space, and the kind of things that the kind of solution is there, but it's just that speed of data transmission, through airway, because then the two cannot do with the other, otherwise they.
I think we are
muted.
we are losing Mr. Joseph, but I think his point is very well made. Can I be heard on the call? I don't know if it's from my end or his end.
Yes,
you are clear.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I think that I was on mute.
Yes,
unfortunately.
Oh, okay.
I think I was on mute. Sorry, I said a lot, but I was on mute. So what I'm basically saying is that satellite services are already coexisting with submarine fiber services.
Right.
But like I said, it's about volume, and it's about speed, and it's about quality of service. This is where the issues are, because if everybody was on satellite today, assuming all the cables went off and everybody was on satellite today, it would be like a traffic jam. We will not be able to move forward. I mean, look at the number of users. You have to look at it from the end point, from the end users. You have millions of end users who are carrying handsets. Satellite cannot process all that information. So what we do is satellite is usually reserved for unserved rural remote areas where we can't reach with our cables. That's one thing. Yeah, I think Andrew touched on that. Or when you have disaster recovery, when there's disaster, then satellite becomes very important. It becomes very critical because the terrestrial infrastructure is damaged most of the time. So then it becomes very critical that we use it. So we have to use it in combination.
Right.
Like what happened with the 4 submarine cables, even though we call it, it was a serious event, I don't think satellite can handle the volume of traffic that was lost. It would have been impossible. So we can use the two, but I think they have different uses, and we have to just recognize that.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I quickly want to invite our MC whilst he guides us for, I think we have just an item, the chairperson's closing remarks, and then the vote of thanks. Mr. David, please, can you hear me?
Yes, Dr. Fuida. Thank
Yes.
you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you to our panelists for such an insightful discussion. We've learned so much. They've also addressed our questions adequately. We are so grateful. As we near the end of our webinar, I would like to invite Dr. Emmanuel Osoware to deliver the closing remarks. Doc, please, if you're online, kindly unmute and give us the closing remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. MC. Yes, indeed, we've had a very fruitful time. We've been learning. We've come across some new terminologies, and you will agree with me that this webinar has given us what goes behind the scenes when we talk about the internet infrastructure. I will attempt to just summarize some key points as takeaways. We started by, just a minute. Okay. Right, so we started by trying to establish what actually happened, the facts. One key point was that 4 cables were cut, and we have learned about these cable providers, SAT3, ACA, that is the African Coast to Europe, WACS, that's West African Cable System, and Main One. At least we've learned something about this key stakeholders as far as the undersea cabling system is concerned. Then when it came to why it happened, the point was made that we are unable at this time to know exactly what is the cause of this unprecedented outage. So we moved on to identify the possible causes, and we were given some insight that naturally related disasters like seismic, we're told that constitute 10% of damages to this critical undersea fiber optic infrastructure. In terms of the human activities as a causal factor, we were told that is 70%. And we are talking about ship anchoring and drilling, etc. Then also there is the intentional causal factor, like sabotage and cable theft. And that will be the remaining 20%. Yeah, so these are the possible causal factors. Concerning the impact, it was clear that yes, at this time we cannot establish the numbers, but it's evident that there's a huge loss of income, loss of revenue across the businesses. It will be interesting to know how much businesses, organizations have lost. And then, of course, the telcos themselves, they will have to grapple with the high cost of repairing the cables. And we are looking at millions of dollars. So that should tell us the impact as far as this outage is concerned. Then we moved on to look at the recovery and restoration process, and we were given insights as to the alternate cable routes, such as to the south and all around the African continent. We were told about the strategic importance of the caching system, and local content as one of the mechanisms by which we were able to progressively recover. But of course, we made note that we could have done better. And Dr. Ayano, for one, was saying that, and I agree with him, this should have been 100% recovery or restoration within 24 hours. But by 18th March, it was rather, I think, 95% or 90% or so, yeah. And that is not good enough considering the widespread internet outage. Okay, so going forward, we will be looking at that into detail, but some solutions were proffered. They talk about cable diversity. So, i.e., having an inland cabling infrastructure as an alternative to the undersea cabling system. We touched on the satellite as a possible alternative, but the consensus among the panelists was that it has its limitation in terms of the high cost and latency and reliability. And I will always remember the analogy of a caterpillar for the satellite.
Mr. Andrews.
And a four-wheel for the fiber cable. Yeah, I think if you forgot anything in this webinar, I'm sure you can take that one away. Yeah, so going forward, the strategic importance of local content, such as the Ghana Internet Exchange was stressed. And in fact, there must be a policy issue regarding how to have local content within the country. And that is very, very important. So that brings in the role of the government and the NCA to develop policies that should look at business continuity. And I would expect that inter-country partnership will be very, very key. And this is not only a single country like ours, it will need government-to-government collaboration. And NCA, for one, should have learned their lessons. They need to be on the stakeholders, the telcos, the MNOs, concerning their business continuity plans. So there's a lot of work to do, but lessons have been learned. And in conclusion, I will say, yes, we have gained some good insights into the critical components of the internet infrastructure. At least for today, we have realized some back-end assets, which we call undersea or submarine fiber optic cable. It has come strongly to the fore, and this is an asset that we should all be interested in, and should the media should begin to talk about undersea cable because it's such a critical infrastructure as far as our dependence on the internet is concerned. Yeah, so I think we've learned a lot. We've learned some terminologies like Kion, and I'm sure we'll be able to articulate it wherever we find ourselves, especially for our students. I'm sure they've had a very deeper insight into the internet infrastructure. And I'm so excited that we had this webinar. So we'll look forward to the part 2 and delve into details as far as the solutions are concerned. Yeah, so thank you to our panelists. Thank you very much. Mr. Odoi, Joseph Odoi, a manager and an engineer in the telecoms space, and Mr. Andrews Asumin. Yes, we thank you so much, sir, for your deep insights in the space. We thank you so much. And of course, our very own Dr. Edwin Ayeno, as usual, he has always been very helpful in contributing to various topics. And for this session, he did not disappoint at all. Yeah, so we thank you very much for your attention, and we thank God for a fruitful session like this. Thank you, and back to the MC.
Thank you very much, Dr. Osoware. And indeed, we look forward to the part 2 of this webinar, such an insightful webinar. I would like to invite Nana Akosua Obenewa, if you are online, from the Department of Information Technology Studies, to deliver the vote of thanks. Nana Akosua, if you are online, can you unmute yourself and give us the vote of thanks?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Nana Akosua, and on behalf of the Department of Information Technology Studies and the webinar organizing committee, I extend my heartfelt gratitude to each one of you for joining us today for our insightful webinar on building resilience in Ghana's internet infrastructure. We are immensely grateful to the Dean of the Faculty of Information Technology and Communication Studies, Professor Emmanuel Asamoah, for his support and presence. Our heartfelt appreciation to our esteemed panelists, Mr. Joseph Odoi, Mr. Andrews Asumin, and Dr. Edwin Tete Ayeno, for sharing their profound insights and expertise in the field of telecommunications and internet infrastructure. Your wealth of knowledge has undoubtedly enriched our understanding of the challenges and opportunities in bolstering Ghana's internet resilience. Special thanks to our chairs, Dr. Godfred Yaw Akrofi, the Vice Dean, and Dr. Emmanuel Owusu-Oware, charging and moderating the panel discussion. To our dynamic HOD, Dr. Agandiba, thank you for your presence. A big thank you also to the Tech Trends team for their meticulous planning and seamless execution. ensuring a smooth and enriching experience for all participants. Finally, we also extend our appreciation to all of you for our esteemed attendees for your active participation and engaging questions, which have contributed to making this webinar a resounding success. As we conclude this session, let us carry forward the valuable insights gained today and work together towards building a more resilient internet infrastructure in Ghana, paving the way for a brighter digital future. Thank you once again, and we look forward to future engagements and continued collaborations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nana Akosua. All right. At this juncture, I would like to call Mr. Adams Azamati to give us the closing prayer. Sir, please, if you're online, kindly unmute yourself and give us the closing prayer. Hello, Mr. Azamati. Kindly unmute yourself and give us the closing prayer.
Hello.
Hello, we can hear you, Mr. Hello, we can hear you.
Let's join our Father.
Hello, Mr. Azamati, please, we can hear you.
That we have done, that the next session is more than we have received. These and many others, greatly register our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
Hello.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you all so much for joining, and we look forward to the part 2 of this webinar series. Thank you all, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone. See you.